What's going on, Thrones fans? This is Throne Runner back again, aka Shamar. Today's a pretty big day because it's the first time I think that I've ever released a Game of Thrones LCG and a Netrunner LCG video in the same day. It's been a pretty busy evening, but I've been really excited about this deck, as I am about pretty much every deck build video that we do. Really excited about this deck. This is one that I've been working on since I got my Taking the Black pack at Worlds. It was kind of a work in progress, as you probably saw in the match with Rob St. John that he uploaded shortly afterwards, where he kind of Varus and destroyed me. But since then, the deck has taken a couple turns. I went from the typical what everyone expected Sea Stone Chair with Fury of the Kraken and all of those things, like straight up kill and aggro, to more of a power rush down type deck, to finding a little mix of both. And I think so far I'm at a happy medium here. I found a pretty decent banner in House Martell, and so things have been going very well. I've had a lot of success with this deck. It's one that's very fun to play because of the different play styles that are incorporated when you mix those two factions together, and it just has a lot of different opportunities and win conditions with this deck. So we're gonna go straight into it because I can't wait to start building this one. So today our focus, as I said, is House Greyjoy, and the agenda that we are playing is Banner of the Sun. Now we know that Martell is very popular because of the fact that they just recently won the Worlds tournament, when everybody thought kind of that they were the worst house out there and blah blah blah. I mean, Rob never really gave up on them. He always had an idea that they would be a pretty good faction, and I think it just took one person to pretty much show everybody that. Despite that, I always thought they had great cards. For me, I was just never, even going back to 1.0, I was never really someone who could play that type of way with the whole lose to win idea. But I find that when I mix them with Greyjoy, it suits my playstyle perfectly that way. So if this is something that you're interested in, either of these two houses, I think that you'll definitely enjoy this deck. As per usual, we're going to start off with our characters in the deck. This one I kind of I guess different to the Night's Watch deck that played 37 characters. This one we play down a lot closer to 32. So to start, we've got 3 copies of Asher Greyjoy, and everyone knows what she does. Everybody hates her. After you win an unopposed challenge in which Asher Greyjoy is participating, stand her. She's got stealth. She costs $5, a military, and a power icon. Next, only 2 copies of Balin. He is a very important card in this deck, but I find, and you'll see when we get onto the plots, that by having 2 copies of him, it's usually enough for me. I would like to, at some point, either get a 3rd copy of Balin or a bodyguard floating around somewhere in the deck, because there are a lot of instances where I wish that I would have him duped, but there's never any issue in finding him. For the first Martell card, we've got the Bastard Daughter, and for me, this is a very, very great card. At first glance, when you look at it, you're probably thinking that it's something similar to, like Direwolf Pup, because of the 2 costs and only having a military icon. The military icon in this case for the Bastard Daughters is not the main focus of the card. The interrupt on the card is what is amazing, and then the fact that, if you're concerned about winning a military challenge on your turn or just not giving up unopposed, then you just throw the Bastard Daughter in as a chump and claim her right away, because her interrupt ability is when Bastard Daughter or the Red Viper is killed. Obviously we're not going to play the Red Viper in this deck. Discard 1 card at random from each opponent's hand. And I've had many instances playing this deck already where my opponent has a 2-claim plot. I've got 2 Bastard Daughters out on the field, and they have 3-4 cards in their hand. Now they're reluctant to win a military challenge because the cards in their hand are ones that are important to them and they don't want to lose it, and it's just free intrigue for me, right? Another example would be I had 3 of them out, 3 Bastard Daughters, and my opponent played a Wildfire with only 3 cards in their hand. Just like that, at the very beginning of their turn, they lose all 3 cards that are in their hand. Their amount of characters that they have on the table is now reduced down to 3, and they're praying to draw characters because my hand size is fine. I've still got characters in my hand. I'm going to throw them out next turn, especially knowing that you've used your wildfire, and now you got to try to catch up in that way. So like I said, this card is one that you use mostly for its effect, but it's also great that, one, it's cheap. You can get it on the table for claim soak. It has a great advantage when you use it as a claim soak, and it's also a great card to throw in for a chump block when you don't want to give up an unopposed challenge. Moving forward, we've got 2 copies of the Desert Scavenger. I personally would like to see 3 of them in the deck someday, but this is also a card that I wouldn't mind playing without any of them. I typically find that, yes, it's great to have this out to reduce the cost of Martell characters in the deck. However, it's not something that's absolutely necessary. It's kind of like a nice little perk when it does work out that way, where I have this scavenger out and I'm about to play a Martell character. But for the most part, it's kind of mostly something to claim. Again, it helps you so that you don't have to give up an unimposed power challenge, and just get your icon spread out that way so that you can focus more on the offensive. But its ability of reducing the cost of a Martell character at the end of the day is just a plus. Moving forward, another amazing card is the Dornish Paramour. Very, very annoying card for your opponent. After Dornish Paramour is declared as an attacker, choose a character controlled by the defending player. That character must be declared as a defender for this challenge if able. So 3 costs, she has an intrigue icon. I also play a floating copy of Noble Lineage in the deck, and typically I like to throw that Noble Lineage on her. The reason being that her ability allows me to pull in on her challenge a character on my opponent's side of the board. So if we look at, for example, a Night's Watch matchup, Night's Watch versus this deck, obviously Night's Watch wants to keep Aemon up because Aemon's able to save a character, blah, blah, blah. You open up your intrigue, you open up challenges with an intrigue and pull Aemon in. Now he's knelt. If they don't have Castle Blackout, they have no way of resetting him and thus cannot use him to save a character. Likewise, if you have the Dornish Paramour out and you already have a Lord's Port Shipwright, you can kneel Castle Black in marshalling. That way they have no way of standing Aemon again. You can use her on cards like Cersei, so that Cersei doesn't get her 2 claim attacks off if you're first player, for example. So this card has a lot of uses. Sometimes it can be used to control big characters like Tywin, but that's a strategy that you only want to do for maybe 1 or 2 turns, not something that you want to do for 4 or 5 turns, because you're going to keep giving Tywin that renown unless you know that when you pull that character in, you're still going to throw in enough attackers to win the challenge. Because she's not, the Dornish Paramour, is not like the Knight of Flowers in that she doesn't have to be the only one attacking. She can be in the challenge with 7 other guys, and you can choose one character that has to be pulled in to defend, so long as they have an icon that she has. So if you can give her all 3 icons, then you can pull anybody in the game into the challenge with her. But as it stands, she can only do intrigue, and that's why I like to have a Noble Lineage. Next, we've got Edric Dane, another reason for the Noble Lineage in the deck. Edric Dane has stealth, no icons unless you pay for one. Action, pay 1 gold to give Edric Dane a challenge icon of your choice until the end of the phase. Very great card in this deck, obviously, because he has stealth, and that plays into the whole Greyjoy stealth tactic, 1. 2, if you can give him Noble Lineage, then that's 1 less icon that you need to pay for. You can focus on using him for stealth power challenges, which will not only obviously win you power, but help you to trigger things like support of the people, and just get unopposed to also trigger things like the Great Kraken, for example. So I like having the Noble Lineage on him or on the Paramour, but it's basically whichever one comes out first, whether it's Edric or the Paramour. And it also depends on board state as well. So if there's a character on the other side of the board that you're very, very worried about, then you would put the Noble Lineage on the Paramour, for example, to pull in like a Balin Greyjoy on defense all the time, because that'll be very beneficial to you. So just 2 copies of Edric. 3 would be a little bit overboard, I think, and 1 would be too little. Moving on, we've got 3 copies of the House Dane Knight. 2 cost, military icon, intrigue, and 2 strength. The reason why we play this card is because it's a great card. For $2, a 2-drop that has a military and an intrigue icon, when you know that House Greyjoy is very, very limited when it comes to intrigue within their faction, this is a very nice card to have. And because it's so cheap and you can have so many of them and pretty much play them on any turn, it always works out. And in addition to that, it'll help you for winning turns when your opponent plays, for example, a Game of Thrones, expecting you not to have any intrigue out on the board. Next, we've got the Iron Islands Fishmonger. Not much to talk about there, just a reducer for the House Greyjoy characters. 1 copy of Littlefinger. Littlefinger, again, is one of those cards that, you know, it would be great to have multiple copies of him. However, because of his cost, and in this deck, he's a card that I wouldn't play in setup. In other decks, I would play him in setup to get that +1 gold bonus. In this deck, however, excuse me, I prefer to play him later on in the game to get that draw off of him. It's kind of unfortunate sometimes when, you know, he's the only thing that you get to play out that turn. So it really depends on what you're going for. But he's mostly, for me, floating the deck for that +1 late game when, you know, I don't really need to worry about playing anybody else at the time. I have a good icon spread. I've got a bunch of characters out on the field. And he's just a positive to throw him out, get that 2-draw, and have that +1 gold bonus moving forward. If there are other smaller characters to play instead of him, then I usually go for those characters first. Littlefinger, like I said, is a card that you play kind of, not necessarily when you're in the lead, but when you feel as though you don't really need to play anything else. So, for example, if you had a lot of King's Roads or Rose Roads out on the field, and you can afford to play Littlefinger and something else, then that would be the turn that you play him. I tend to avoid playing him as my only marshal, because to me it's just not worth it that way in this deck. So only 1 copy of Littlefinger. Next, we've got 2 copies of the Lordsport Shipwright, which we touched on briefly. It used to be 3. 2 cost, 1 intrigue. Sorry, 2 cost, 1 icon, which is an intrigue, and 1 strength. Kneel Lordsport Shipwright to choose a kneel location with printed cost 2 or lower. 3 or lower instead if you are the first player. I played 3, like I said, and I just found it to be a little bit overkill. The ability is great, yes. You can use it to kneel things like King's Road. You can use it to kneel any annoying location that your opponent has, except the wall. However, having 3 of them just wasn't really all that necessary. 2, you'll see it more than enough. This deck has a lot of draw in it because of how easy it is to get the Great Kraken out and get that whole mechanic working for you. So just having 2 copies of this guy is great. It's just a matter of remembering his ability and making sure that if you are going to use his ability, that you still have an intrigue icon elsewhere on the board to kind of help you out for not giving up unopposed and potentially even winning intrigue challenges on defense and surprising your opponent. And a way to help you do that is by having a card like Maester Calliote. I don't know, some people pronounce it different. I've heard Calliote. I just say Maester Calliote. It makes sense to me. 3 cost, intrigue icon. And you can see here, this deck is high intrigue. I love it. 3 cost, intrigue icon, power icon, and 2 strength. Reaction: after you lose a challenge in which Maester Calliote is participating, choose a character. That character loses a challenge icon of your choice until the end of the phase. Amazing card. I love this guy. I really, really like this guy. If you use him in conjunction with the Paramour and pull in, I don't know, someone that's stronger than, you know, 5 strength, because I believe the Paramour has 3. Paramour has 3. Pull in someone that's stronger than 5 strength, your opponent wins. Then you use Maester Calliote to swipe a military icon from a standing character like Jaime, for example, and that just makes you so much more likely to get an unopposed challenge when you're going on to your other types of challenges. Likewise, when you know that you're going to lose a challenge anyways, power or intrigue, you can use it to mess with your opponent, throw him in and lose on purpose, and then just swipe an icon from somebody else to limit their challenges. He has a lot of uses, and we'll see later that because this deck, rather than play cards like Put to the Sword, it plays Tears of Lys, and obviously Tears of Lys, you can only play it on a character that doesn't have an intrigue icon. So you lose a challenge with Maester Calliote, for example, swipe Tywin's Intrigue icon, and then on your turn, if your opponent doesn't have too much up, you can even win an easy Intrigue challenge with 1 strength using the Lord's Port Shipwright and play a Tears of Lys out for a buck and kill Tywin Lannister. I mean, he adds just a different dynamic to the deck and allows you to do a lot more things that you couldn't do otherwise. Next, we've got 2 copies of Maester Wendemir. Pretty straightforward. Maester Wendemir, 2 costs, power icon, and stealth. Don't really use him for anything else other than winning power challenges and helping me trigger support of the people. Very important against Night's Watch decks. Again, when you need to get that unopposed, he will help you get that. And then lastly, last of the Greyjoy characters is Theon Greyjoy. After you win an unopposed challenge in which Theon is participating, he gains 1 power. I find that Theon is a character that my opponents tend to go for early, whether it be with a Put to the Sword or a Tears of Lys, because of how quickly his ability can stack up. And if you think about the fact that if he's out with other characters, he's going to stealth, Ash is going to stealth, whatever have you, it's going to go unopposed. He's going to get a power, you're going to get a power for unopposed, and you can get a power from Great Kraken being unopposed, and that's 3 power in the turn, not to mention the power that you claim from the power challenge. And if it's a Clash of Kings turn, that's 5 power. So having him out and his little pseudo renown type deal that he's got going on can get you to the win very, very quickly. I tend to like to have him out just as a reason or a target for my opponent to just blow cards on. So don't get too upset when you lose Theon early. Asher Greyjoy's ability, in my opinion, is still far better than his. However, because his gets you so much closer to the win, your opponent's going to go after him and getting rid of his stealth and ability much quicker than they do for Asha, which is funny because Theon's the one that costs less. And lastly, the deck was a lot different before this guy. I had to put him in because of all the trouble that he's been causing people and myself lately, and that's Varys. 6 cost Intrigue icon. He also has stealth, so he ties into the stealth theme of the deck and getting you unopposed. But what's more important here is his interrupt ability. When the dominance phase ends, remove Varys from the game to discard each character from play. And so this isn't one of the reasons why I would like to have a 3rd copy of Balin or a bodyguard that's floating around that I can put on some characters, is because when Varys' ability pops off, you're able to cancel it if you have a dupe or a bodyguard out. Other than that, though, it's a fantastic card. It helps you come back into the game when you're getting blown out of the water. You know, I don't play Wildfire, so if I'm getting blown out of the water, things aren't going my way, or you're playing against a Night's Watch Indomitable type deck, he will clear the board for you and give you that opportunity to come back. And I've seen that happen numerous times playing against Rob St. John. He's done it to me. I've just done it recently in a match against Joe from Cincinnati, who came up with the whole Night's Watch and showed me the Night's Watch Stark idea. I did it against him when I was down like almost 10-0 or something like that. Used Varys and came back and won the game. So he's a very, very great card. He's a very important card, and he's one that I like to see every game. Even if you just play him out and he just sits there and you don't do it, just the threat of that happening means that your opponent isn't going to play a big character until they find that big character's dupe, and that just gives you more and more time to establish a greater lead and to disrupt their play, because now you have intrigue icons. You're able to do stealth intrigue and pull those big characters out of their hands that they're so reluctant to play. So he's a fantastic card. He's a fantastic card in this deck. It's just important to remember that, if you're going to play summons and you pull Varys, summons is only a 4 gold plot, Varys costs 6. So try not to pull him on a turn where you're unable to play him, because 1, your opponent's just going to go intrigue heavy and try to pull him out of your hand, or 2, they just know that you're not able to play him that turn, so they're still going to continue to do whatever they want, unless you've got like a secret King's Road in hand that is going to get Varys out on the table right away. But yeah, there's 3 copies of Varys in the deck, and that's to round us out at 32. Next, moving on to the attachments. Only 2 copies of Milk of the Poppy. Treat attached characters printed text boxes if it were blank. I used to play 3. I still like having 3 of them in the deck because, it's never a bad thing to see a Milk of the Poppy while you're playing. But I dropped it to 2. It's a 61 card deck as usual. I dropped it to 2 to fit in that noble lineage, because I found that when I do see that noble lineage, it always gets put to work. Whereas there are a lot of times where I grab a Milk of the Poppy and I don't do anything with it, or I see a milk in setup and I can't do anything with it. At least with Noble Lineage, it's a 0 cost attachment. It's going to be that extra card in setup, because you can pretty much throw it on whoever, and when that character dies, it's not terminal, it's going to come back to your hand type thing. So I find it just has more uses in terms of keeping the deck moving versus Milk of the Poppy. Yes, it does suck sometimes when I'm playing against, Lannister, and I've milked Tyrion and I've milked Cersei, and then Tywin drops on the board and I know that I can't milk him. Good and bad, because this deck does have Seastone Chair in it, and for those of you who know Seastone Chair is unable to be used on a character that has an attachment. So if you throw a Milk of the Poppy down on Tywin, you cannot win a military challenge and use Seastone Chair to claim Tywin because of the attachment. So unless you're playing like We Do Not Sow, so you're going to milk Tywin, win an unopposed challenge, reaction We Do Not Sow, remove Milk of the Poppy, and then reaction Seastone Chair to kill Tywin Lannister. If you've got all the money to and if you got all the money and resources on the board to do all of that, then by all means go ahead and play 3 copies of Milk. But for the most part, like I said, you cannot use it on a character that has an attachment on it. So I tend to not really worry too much about playing Milk of the Poppy or having 3 copies of it anymore. On to the locations. 2 copies of the Great Kraken. If I can find there it is. The Great Kraken. Reaction: after you win an unopposed challenge, either draw 1 card or gain 1 power for your faction. We've spoken about this earlier. For me, when I'm playing this deck and I have Great Kraken out, I typically do not use it to gain power until it's the turn that I believe will win me the game, or the turn before, one turn prior to the one that I think will win me the game. Typically, I find it more advantageous for me to use it to draw cards, especially if you've played Varys and you've used Varys. You're going to want to make sure that your hand size is relatively large so that you're able to recover from the Varys much more quickly than your opponent is. If you think about the Lannister fealty decks where they just bump characters back to your hand, intrigue them out of your hand, dupe their characters on the board, and then Varys and clear your side, that's the whole strategy of their deck, is making sure that their hand size, their card advantage, is greater than yours, so that after the Varys play, they're able to recover and pretty much keep you under wraps, like keep their foot on your throat type of thing. So you want to keep drawing cards, keep seeing all the resources that you need. Don't, play Great Kraken turn 1, turn 2, and use it to gain 3 power, because that's not going to really help you as you move later on to the game. It's going to give your opponent something to steal from you in a power challenge, but it's not going to give you anything really moving forward. So I save it for those last couple turns when I need that little extra push to win me the game. Because if you think about it, when you get those unopposed challenges for having 5 stealth guys on the board, you're going to claim 2 power for each of those challenges if you're able to get all 3 of them off. And not only that, like I said, if it's a Clash of Kings turn, that's an extra power right there. If you have Balin out with Renown, if you have Theon out on the board with his pseudo Renown, that's a lot of power that you're getting. But you just want to make sure that you have the cards and resources to get you to that winning point, is what I'm trying to say. So just 2 copies of the Great Kraken. A lot of people say to play 3, but I don't think that we need 3 because of support of the people being out, and we'll get to that shortly. Next is 3 copies of Iron Fleet Scout. 0 cost. I still don't understand how this is 0. It should be at least not 2. I think it should cost 1, to be fair. Don't understand how it's 0, but I'm not going to complain because I love Greyjoy. Challenge to action: kneel Iron Fleet Scout to choose a participating Greyjoy character. Until the end of the challenge, that character gets +1 strength or +2 strength instead if you are the first player. This card is auto 3 in my deck, and it will be an auto 3 in any Greyjoy deck I build for the foreseeable future, because even if you're not playing like Drowned Men, who get +1 strength for each worship out, it's 0 cost. And so if you see 2 of these in setup, if you see 3 of these in setup, even if you see 1 of these in setup, that's a free card that's getting out, and it's a free draw for you. I just played a game recently against my buddy Tim where I saw 2 of these in setup, and I actually ended up getting a 7-card setup. It was 2 copies of Asher Greyjoy. It was 2 copies of Iron Fleet Scout. It was 1 copy of the Martell Reducer, I believe. 1 copy of the Greyjoy Reducer. So that'd be 5, 6, 7. And then I think I just threw like a... and a King's Road would be the 7th card. So cards like this are great in setup. And they help you for turns when you're trying to play that support of the people. So, you know, you do your little challenge with Asher Greyjoy, your opponent thinks you're doing a great job, they block it with 1 or 2 or whatever, and now they're not worried about support. Well, because this is a challenges action and you can do it after declaring your attackers or after your opponent declares defenders, you're then able to throw in these extra fleet scouts, get yourself up to that 5 threshold, and then pop support of the people. So very great card. It even helps bailing out a lot because now he's able to get unopposed that much easier. If you boost him to 9 strength and no one's able to match 9 except for Tywin really, then that's a free unopposed challenge right there. If it's a power challenge, you're going to get the unopposed power, you're going to get the renown power, you're going to get the power claim, you're going to get to the reaction of support of the people and bust that out to find the Great Kraken and trigger Great Kraken that same time, because it's still after winning the unopposed challenge, and then draw a card. So it's freaking insane. 3 copies of that. Then 3 copies of the Sea Tower, which is just the factional reducer. So reduce the next Greyjoy card that you play this turn. 1 copy of the Iron Throne, which gives you 8 strength and dominance. And it's 2 costs to get out. I love to see this card in setup. Like you've just seen, we only play 1 copy of the Iron Throne. If I do draw it in setup, I make sure that I put it out in setup right away. Or else, when I do support of the people, the first card that I find with support of the people is usually the Great Kraken. Second card is usually the Iron Throne. Depending on the board state, first card will be Great Kraken. Second card might be Sea Stone Chair. So, like I said, it all depends. You are probably the best judge of what you want to do or how you want to do it. So don't think that that's like the be all and end all type of scenario. You really kind of just mold it to whatever is going on in the game. But I usually find that Great Kraken first and then Iron Throne second. And because of all the draws off of Great Kraken, you'll see the one that you don't choose. 3 copies of the King's Road. Reduce the next character you play by 3. And 3 copies of the Rose Road, which is just a +1 gold bonus. And then a single copy of the Sea Stone Chair. One day, again, I would like to get this up to 2. But because of the limitation without attachments, that's the reason why I don't play more than 1 copy of it, because people obviously know about this card. They're going to have lots of noble lineages floating around in their deck. They're going to have bodyguards floating around in their deck. They're going to have any type of attachments that they can think of to just throw on a character that they don't want to die in the deck. So that really limits the Sea Stone Chair in that sense. But if you're able to get it out early before your opponent can get those attachments out, or if you play We Do Not Sow, as we talked about earlier, because of the fact that this is an interrupt that happens before claim, and We Do Not Sow would be a reaction to winning the challenge, so that happens much earlier than the Sea Stone Chair would happen, then you are able to, you know, win an unopposed military challenge, pay 1 gold, We Do Not Sow, remove an attachment from the character that you want to kill, and then you follow along the windows and you get to the interrupt when claim is applied. Then you can still choose that character and kill it because now it doesn't have an attachment. Unfortunately, at this present time, I don't play We Do Not Sow because of the fact that I play 2 copies of the Kraken's Grasp instead. I find that I would like to play We Do Not Sow rather than Kraken's Grasp because of the limitation on Kraken's Grasp that says you need to be first player to use it. So there are times when that becomes a dead card, and We Do Not Sow would be much better to have for that reason. But that I will leave up to you. That's the choice, again, that would be pre-tournament for me. Like, What do I think my opponents are going to have? What's going to be the most prevalent thing at this tournament? Maybe I should swap out Kraken's Grasp for We Do Not Sow. Are my plot initiatives high enough that I can play Kraken's Grasp when I need to play it? Things like that. So I really believe that Kraken's Grasp, for most players, will be the two cards that you just drop out and switch for copies of We Do Not Sow. So that's 16 locations. Last is the attachments, the events. And this is the very fun part, because you're able to play these events as if you were playing a Martell deck without actually playing Martell. So 3 copies of Confinement. Choose a character with strength 4 or lower, until the end of the phase. That character loses all 3 of its icons. A military icon, an intrigue icon, and a power icon. So I believe if your opponent, for example, uses Noble Lineage on a character, you can find it. They're still going to have a power icon because that gets added after the fact, and Confinement only removes 1 of each. That's my understanding of it. I could be totally wrong. I'm sure some RRG master out there is going to come and tell me otherwise. But my understanding of the language is that it loses 1 of each type of icon. So if that character has technically 2 icons, so they're gaining 1 from something else, even though they already have a printed one, this card isn't going to remove all of the printed ones. That's just my understanding again. So 3 copies of Confinement, 2 copies of Support of the People. After you win a power challenge by 5 or more strength, search your deck for a location with printed cost 3 or lower and put it into play. Shuffle your deck. Fortunately for us, every location in this deck is of cost 3 or lower, so you could target whatever you wanted to. I mean, if you set up Great Kraken and Iron Fleet Scout and the Iron's Road, and the Iron Throne, and a Seastone Chair, whatever, and you wanted to play this card still, it would still be a great idea to play Support of the People and search for a Rose Road, for example. Get that out and get that bonus immediately next turn. If you had all the other things and you didn't really need anything else to search for, you just wanted to get rid of the Support of the People, there's really no reason not to do that. I mean, there's no point in saving the 1 gold for nothing. We're not playing Martell long plan. We're not going to get to keep our gold, so you might as well spend it if you've got it. And again, like I said, because of the 5 or more strength win condition, cards like Iron Fleet that boost you in the challenge are great, because you get to see the math ahead of time. You get to determine whether or not you want to boost yourself up to that 5 threshold and then trigger Support of the People. So it gives you the decision. You don't need to throw in 10 power right away. You can throw in the 4, count it up, see what your opponent wants to put out, and then adjust yourself accordingly, especially if you're the first player, because you get +2 strength instead of +1 when you use the Iron Fleet Scout. Third card is Tears of Lys. After you win an Intrigue challenge as the attacking player, place a poison token on a character without an Intrigue icon controlled by the losing opponent. At the end of the phase, if that character still has a poison token, remove it and kill that character. So, going back to Confinement, we all know this combo. Confinement to remove Intrigue icon, win Intrigue challenge, play Tears of Lys on the character that now has no Intrigue. Totally legal. But it can't be used on characters with strength of 4 or more, as you guys already know, because of Confinement. However, the way around that is going back to Maester Kaliot. After you lose a challenge in which Maester Kaliot is participating, choose a character. That character loses a challenge icon of your choice until the end of the phase. So you could totally throw Maester Kaliot into a power challenge and lose, and then strip the 17 strength Tywin Lannister of his Intrigue icon, or the 27 strength freaking Robert Baratheon, who had, I don't know, a little bird on him, strip him of his Intrigue icon and Tears of Lys him. So Maester Kaliot is very important because he helps you for those characters that have greater than 4 strength. So already this is a card that you should be looking for. It's not worth playing the Maester plot for, but he's one that's going to help you out a lot. So 3 copies of Tears of Lys, and then finally, as it stands right now, it's 3 copies of the Kraken's Grasp, which is choose a defending character. Sorry, play only if you are the first player, first of all. And then challenges action, choose a defending character with strength 5 or lower. That character does not contribute its strength, there's a typo here, to this challenge. So we were saying, rather than do 2 copies of that, you might do well to take 2 copies of We Do Not Sow. After you win an unopposed challenge, choose an attachment or location controlled by the losing opponent and discard it from play. That's going to be my switch on the fly right now during this deck building video for that reason, because I've played this deck many times, and I've had the Kraken's grasp sit in my hand because I'm like, oh, jeepers. Yeah, jeepers. Oh, jeepers. I'm not first player. And you'd be surprised. I mean, our plots do have decently high initiative. However, when you've got 3 Iron Fleet scouts out that are giving you +2 strength in challenges, your opponent's not going to let you be first player. They're just not going to. There's no way that they'll let that happen, for the most part anyways. And because of the fact that they know about cards like the Kraken's Grasp. So they're just not going to let that happen. So I think you're better to do We Do Not Sow, especially in a turn when you're second player. That allows your opponent to do all the attacking first, and it makes your windows for unopposed challenges that much easier when you're playing second anyways. So I think that We Do Not Sow is definitely a great choice. Another option would be to play Hand's Judgment to cancel events. However, I find that I don't really have too much gold going into challenges. I usually only have enough for the confinement and the Tears of List, so 2 gold. And I would rather do that than cancel my opponent's event, because yeah, it would suck if my opponent plays a Tears of List on me or Put to the Sword on me, whatever, but there's enough characters and there's enough ways in this deck to get around that. So it wouldn't be the end of the world to allow your opponent to pop off some events, in my opinion. That's just me. So lastly, we've got the plots in the deck. 1 copy of a Clash of Kings. After you win a challenge, a power challenge, move 1 power from the losing opponent's faction card to your own. So essentially it's a 2-claimer only for power challenges. Everything else is 1 claim, but then when you win a power challenge, you're going to steal 1 for claim and then move another one over to yourself. 4 gold, very high initiative at 9 and 1 claim. Next, we've got a Feast for Crows because of the Iron Throne and the fact that I can play a late Support of the People to tutor for the Iron Throne and get it out. 6 gold, huge, helps you get so much out on the table, especially when you've got any other gold bonuses out as well. Only 1 initiative though, and 1 claim. However, after you win dominance, gain 2 power for your faction. So if you got the Iron Throne out, you're going to win dominance, that's 1 power, and then you're going to trigger this and win another 2, so 3 for the turn. And if you think about the unopposed, again, Theon, Renown, things like that, that's a lot of power that you're going to get in 1 turn without even really realizing. One thing to note, though, is that the reserve on it is only 4. So that'll be the turn when you're using the Great Kraken to take power instead of to draw cards, because you don't want to have to discard cards for no reason. So this is like a game-winning, late-game type of plot. This one and Clash of Kings for me are usually my 2 later plots. Next is a Noble Cause. We all know this card. This is like one of the most popular plots played currently. And the reason why I play that obviously is because of Asha, Balin, Varys, Littlefinger, Theon, Edric Dane. So that's already 6 lords or ladies in the deck that this card can target. So very useful out of this Greyjoy deck here. Calling the Banners. When revealed, choose an opponent, gain 1 gold for each character that player controls. Because this deck isn't heavy kill and super aggro, there are going to be times when your opponent has characters on the board. For me, if my opponent has 3 characters out and I play Calling the Banners, that's a win for me, because that's 6 gold right there. Anytime I hit that 6 mark, that's a win for Calling the Banners, in my opinion. 5 is kind of meh to me, so I usually don't play if my opponent has 2 characters out, but 3 or more, and I go for it every time. Finally, we've got 1 copy of Marched to the Wall. Each player chooses a character he or she controls if able and discards it from play. Very good card for when you're able to finally limit your opponent's board down. You kind of get the Seastone Chair going and all of those different synergies. March to the Wall is great. And it's also great as a crappy hand punish or a crappy setup punish. If your opponent mulligans into a hand that, you know, only has 1 character, 2 characters, whatever, and you throw down a March to the Wall because you've got 3 characters, 4 characters out, you pretty much always come out on top. Not only that, but it has high initiative on it. Your opponents' wildfire assault plays are usually telegraphed. So if you play March to the Wall, you have the higher initiative. You can choose which plot gets triggered first, and kind of not totally negate the effects of the wildfire, but just make sure that wildfire happens on your terms type thing. So I really enjoy having this card in my deck, and it's one that I pretty much put into all of my decks rather than play wildfire even still. And lastly, I played 2 copies of summons. It took a while to get used to playing 2 copies of summons, but overall I really enjoy this over playing, you know, like a plot like Filthy Accusations or something like that, or Wildfire. Having 2 summons, it's like drawing 3 cards in draw phase, in my opinion, and knowing that one of them is going to be a character. For the most part, there have been times when summons, you know, totally whiffs, but that's very few and far between. Even if you have to reveal what that character is to your opponent, you're still drawing an extra card before draw phase. So you're, like I said, you're drawing 3, and if you have 2 copies of it, that's 2 draw phases where you get 3 cards instead of 4 cards, so 6 cards instead of 4 cards. And that card advantage, like we've talked about before, is very important. Not only that, but this allows you to find dupes. So Ash is a card that I typically always see in setup because there are 3 copies of her, and I like to mulligan aggressively for her. If I find just 1 copy of her and I play summons turn 1 and I see her dupe, I'll grab it, or I'll grab Balin if I have a King's Road. I'll grab Varys. I'll grab Edric Dane usually. So it's just very nice to have, and it helps your deck get set up that much more quickly. As it stands right now, I'm very happy with the plots. I don't really want to change too much of them. If there was one plot, if somebody asked me like what's one plot that you would change if you definitely had to change one, that would likely be a noble cause for something else. What that something else is, I would like to have Power Behind the Throne somewhere in the deck for Balin mostly. But as it stands right now, like I said, I've had pretty good successes with this deck. I mean, the only losses that it's experienced have been against Rob in games where, well, the first deck, my gold curve was way too high. So after he versed me, I was pretty much done. Like, I couldn't afford to get anything else back on the board. So I reduced the gold curve on it a little bit, but then I played him in a game recently, and I believe he versed in that game as well. And I couldn't get set up fast enough. And I couldn't see my cards fast enough. It would still end up being a pretty close game, and he had to work very hard to get it. But I think with any deck currently, the Varys play is one that is that has a very negative effect on most decks. And for whatever reason, whenever I play Rob, I can't find the milk of the poppy to save my freaking life. So there's that as well. But all in all, that is the deck. I was asked to provide the deck list for this because of someone that watched the match between myself and Joe from Cincinnati, where I came back from, I'm pretty sure it was like 10 power down, whatever it was. I came back. He has it posted on his YouTube channel. I'll put a link to that in this video, as well as in the description down low. So yeah, if you want to see the deck get played, unfortunately it's on Octagon. It's not with real cards, but I'll try to get some footage of the real cards being played, this deck being played in actuality, in the very near future. Unfortunately, I'm going on vacation for a week, so that won't be until after Christmas. But totally try the deck out. Put some changes in if you want. Throw in like a second Seastone chair or something, and just let me know how it goes, man. Greyjoy is still my favorite faction, despite my dedication to Night's Watch as of late. But Greyjoy is still my favorite faction, still my primary faction. And like I said, this is a deck that I've put a lot of time and focus into, and a lot of play testing into. And so I hope that it's one that you guys enjoy. And I think that another reason why it's so successful is because people really don't expect the Tears of Least play out of Greyjoy. They just assume that, you know, it's straight up military and bumping your opponent around and trying to bop them on the head with a put to the sword. But you've got that Tears of Least in there, you've got that Confinement in there, and you've got Maester Kaleo and the Dornish Paramour to help kind of mess stuff up and mess with your opponent's plans. So it's a very fun deck, very interesting deck, and one that kind of keeps your opponent always guessing. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I said, let me know how you guys enjoy it. Feel free to post, as always, any questions, comments, or whatever have you. Email me at throne.runner@gmail.com. This will be, as usual, posted to the Throne Runner YouTube channel as well as thronerunner.com and posted in the podcast format, because we haven't done that in a very long time. So again, thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Everybody take care. Peace.